On this episode of the John 1911 podcast, John 1911 is not gone. Anderson is gone. The NFA is almost gone. And SIG Sauer is fucking dead. Okay, good evening, everybody. This is episode 376 of the John 1911 podcast, and this is going to be a solo episode. This is going to be a proof of life. The rumors of our demise are untrue. Not there ain't that many rumors, not really. But we have been offline with the podcast for a while. When I say we, blame me, not the boys. Kraken is busy dealing with his new UTV, another one he's bought. And Danny, I believe, is, last I checked, in Wisconsin on vacation with his family. So I took that as a good opportunity to start working on some projects around here at the John 1911 range, which is where I'm sitting right now. Today is Wednesday, July the 9th at 7:18 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I like to timestamp some of this because, as I publish things and things happen, you never know if you're going to be behind the curve as far as what I'm saying and what the listener knows, especially when it comes to SIG Sauer and the P320. So we will come back to that, I promise you, at some point. So what's been going on? So, well, around here, I have started the final push towards the construction at the John 1911 range. The biggest thing I'm putting in a parking lot at the around the barn. So, we use the porch, but we can pull up. People can pull up. It's usable. I'll probably end up putting some kind of fire pit on the property for people to hang out at night, maybe after they're done shooting. Also, it kind of realized that if I'm going to put a big parking lot outside of the barn, it kind of made sense to also put a little itty bitty range right off the barn, because there's a berm right behind, the range barn. So the backside of another berm. So, with that porch, I'm kind of looking at it as, I can call it the rimfire range, but I mean, you could shoot ARs, you could shoot 308s into that berm if you want. I just don't know why you'd, unless you're function testing, but, coming in and out of the range, going there, shooting the berm. But the nice thing is we're putting the gravel down, and then we're taking it to the berm. And so we can set targets and target stands, or even, if you wanted a plink or just throw some cans out there, and we can shoot from the parking lot. And if it's inclement weather or raining or whatever, and or let's say we get a bunch of snow and it builds up out there, we can do some quick shooting, testing, functioning, maybe some draws and whatever from the porch, under the porch. I mean, it's a little loud under that porch, but that's why you were hearing protection. So in the process of putting in a parking lot, it's like, well, I guess I'm putting in another range. And so not that what I'm about to tell you matters for you or you care. We're also putting a strip of gravel around the barn, 360, just so it's easier to administer all sides of the barn. Getting to the the AC units, or getting to the utilities on the backside. Especially if it's wet or muddy or whatever. So we're doing all that, but in doing all of this, we have to move a lot of dirt. And what kind of happened differently this time versus what I've done with dirt work in the past is I kind of let the dirt work people go. I mean, we're still friends, but it's the summer and it's been real wet this spring, and getting quotes from them, I could already tell I was going to be back where I was the previous 2 years, where they'll show up, they'll do a little bit of work, drop a bunch of equipment, I'm committed. And then, they got to go and deal with the water main break at the whatever city, and go deal with whatever at this town, and go deal with this whatever in this village. And all of these prevailing wage big clients get moved in front of me. And the John 1911 range is sitting, barely getting anything done. And, the project takes all summer. So at least I decided we cut them loose. I went ahead and rented some earth moving equipment myself, kind of figured it out, and, cut the parking lot myself. We had to cut in some drainage because the way the grade is around the barn with some of the other construction around, Peter wasn't talking to Paul quite right. So I had to cut some drainage in for that. But scraping up all of that dirt, the amount of dirt, we those of you who know how to do dirt work, bear with me. Those of you that don't just understand this, you kind of got two types of dirt you got to deal with. You can choose to not do it this way, but you'll regret it when you go to finish stuff up. Is your topsoil, which is your good dirt where all your grass or stuff grows, you scrape that off, you set that off to the side. And then you start getting into the clay and cutting for drainage and how, depending on how deep you want to go, depending if like for example a parking lot, how much gravel I want to put down. We're gonna actually do it like you do the road. We're gonna put dense road base first, and then I believe it's 53 then 73. I can never like the size of the gravel, like it, you do the big gravel at the bottom, then at the next smallest size, then the next smallest size, and it kind of builds it up over time. So we have, with all this extra dirt, we have a privacy hedgerow is what I'll call it, up by the road, and it was about halfway across this hayfield, gorgeous hayfield, and again up by the road, not in the middle of the field. And I was starting to get worried about the amount of dirt I was getting piled up around here, so I went ahead and extended the privacy hedgerow with a probably metric tons of dirt, across. So then I went and got into the topsoil, put topsoil on top of that. I'll go to the local feed store and get some of the little cutesy wildflowers and grass, and make it all cute for the housewives to drive by or whatever, out here, the hippies out here. And so, like that, there's a fair amount of dirt, and then it's like, well, we got to scrape up the dirt that's around the barn. I wanted to increase the size of the pad a little bit out of the garages. So scrape that up. Then it's dig all around this parking lot, on the other side of the barn where the porch is, and the windows, kind of the side that, the viewer and on our videos would see. And then it's extended to a berm so we can also function as a small gun range. And then I wanted to put and I've done all this, I've had to cut an all-season road from this new parking lot down around the side of the pistol pit, and I've taken it all the way down to what would be like what I'd call the picnic shelter. It would be the covered shooting position on the rifle range. And then I've connected that line to the existing gravel that's down there. I've connected it to the existing road that goes into the pistol or the pit, like kind of up towards the barn. And then I've decided to put a second larger road, kind of almost a gravel bridge, because we ended up digging up a culvert pipe and putting a culvert pipe down for the drainage, and we're cutting through and putting all that in. So it's a shit ton of dirt, and so much dirt. I started looking for projects to do around here to clean things up. So one of the pain points we have is near I call it the 100-yard shooting position. And the reason it's called the 100-yard is you can shoot 500 yards even, but we created some flat surfaces there. Again, the previous dirt work people, who aren't really gun people, didn't really, they just kind of did what we said, but they weren't really thinking about administering a rifle range. There's an area near all of that that's kind of steep to run a tractor on, or run a bush hog on, or even run vehicles up and down, because they cut into the hill they pull dirt out of that area to make a flat area somewhere else. So I've got all this extra clay. We've taken a bunch of dirt, put it down there. I'm going to run a bunch of topsoil on that. And I still have a ton of clay. So what I've decided to do is, the pit has always been a 270-degree shooting position. And every once in a while, we'll get some kind of douchebaggy guy who wants to play the gotcha game on the internet who complains about breaking the 180. We don't have a 180 at the John 1911 range in the pit. And we're even built to DOE specs as far as 50 BMG rifles. So we're good, bro. Well, I've turned the 270-degree range into a 360-degree range. And I've put a fairly large berm uh, on the, I guess it would be the north, no, it'd be the west side of, yeah, because our range goes north-south. It'd be the west side of the pit. So being in the pit, looking over at the covered shooting position, you're not going to really be able to see that anymore. But we can start to shoot 360 degrees in the pit. I could probably host more shooters if people wanted to do some pistol qualifications. Some of these, local police departments are not really that big, but it's good to be able to spread them out and, just put one or two over here on the side. Um, we're doing that. And what else was there? Something else I wanted to say. So that berm is fairly big. It's not as big as the main berm that's built to the DOE specs, but it's a pretty good berm. So we've turned the major upgrades to the pit, major upgrades to parking, major upgrades for the road to get a road down there, so I can more easily get vehicles down to the shooting position and into the pit, even if it's really wet or really muddy or really snowy. And it was never really much of a problem before. We've gotten away with it for years, just having grass, because the reality is, if someone goes down there, they tear things up a little bit. We try to be a little careful, but it heals up over time. But now with the building out here and the facilities out here, there are people here every day. And so once you start tearing that up, it gets run on every day, and it's just gonna be a swamp. So hence the reason why I had to put this giant ass road in. So why am I telling all you of this now? Because, well, that's all basically done. I got to do a little bit of finish grade with the tractor, just clean up some stuff, and then it was a couple days ago. The forecast was 8 of the next 10 days of rain, and it's like, well, I guess we're going to be done with that for a while and get back to working on John 1911 stuff. So that's where we're at now. I'm hoping to start getting. I doubt I'll get gravel dropped in here tomorrow, but I'm hoping me putting the gravel down, because we have all the equipment to do all that already here. We've got grader planes. We have a box blade. I wouldn't use the box blade for that. We got a grader plane. We've got buckets, and we can back drag and put stuff down, and we can grade very easily with a grader plane. And that won't take a week or 10 days of me sitting in a machine. So to give you an idea, this Bobcat that we rented, first I rented it for a week, and then I ended up extending it for 3 days. And then, it took them 3 or 4 days to come and get it. They finally got it today. And I put, it was at 29, almost just shy of 30 hours, actual, machine Hobbs meter hours on this thing. And I've kind of come to, it's been illuminating. I started off like, holy shit, how do I run this Bobcat? To now I'm like, I know how to run the shit out of a Bobcat. I'm sure there's some guy like the Bobcat school that, skid steer school is like, whatever, dude. And you're right. But I kind of know what I'm doing now. And there's been a couple things that I've realized. So the first thing is, if my ass never sits in a Bobcat seat again, it'll be too soon. I was getting so sick of being in that machine. And, I really don't want one. But the economics, because one thing I noticed with Bobcats is they're all around. All these farmers have Bobcats. They're old, but everybody around here's got a skid steer or the one with wheels or whatever you call them. I guess they're still skid steers with wheels. And they sit. Well, you start realizing when I've rented this machine and I can't do anything because of the weather, and it's costing me $400 a day, very quickly you start to realize the economics of it is much more affordable to own the Bobcat than it is to rent it if you need it more than, like, say, just a few days. So I'd like to say I'll never get a Bobcat. I'm hoping I won't really ever need one again. I don't think a Toolcat would replace a Bobcat. We got a tractor. So my apologies to everybody. That's where the content's been at. It's just been, I keep telling myself this is the end of 4 years of work, and we'll get back to a normal schedule. No, when the B-2 bombers dropped weapons on Fordo, it didn't knock us offline. That was one email I got. I'm not going to say her name, but that was pretty funny. Like, I noticed you guys went offline right after the B-2s dropped on Fordo. I was like, okay, all right. That made my day. That got a lot of people chuckling around here. So that's where we're at. That's what's going on. Everything's fine. Investing in the future. More to come with that. All right, let's talk about some gun stuff. Gun projects. Um, I'm kind of a little at a disadvantage here because I've worked on things, but I don't quite remember what I've published and what I haven't, and what I've done. So I have a lot of cleanup to do, but I'll give kind of tip of the hat here. We have on the to-do list. Well, hold on. Confession time. You may have noticed over the past almost month, there's been a lot of these John 1911 2025 project videos, going through the armory and pulling up, like, hey, this gun needs a spring. This gun needs a screw. This gun needs a whatever. This gun needs to be zeroed. This gun, whatever. And while all of that is absolutely true because things have gotten neglected around here, I also was aware that this final run was going to take a lot of time with the content schedule, and so I needed content to keep us alive to carry us through while I'm out there, my butt sitting on a skid steer instead of paying somebody. Um, if if I had to do a chance to do it again, and I could find someone that would actually show up, I would have rather paid the money for the dirt work just so I could have gotten more done. It's not worth my time to save the money. My time is more valuable than money. That's kind of a douchebag thing to say, especially for a lot of people that are hurting. But it's just the economics of kind of how things work around here. I'm not necessarily proud of it, but me sitting around running that skid steer and not working on gun projects kind of pisses me off a little bit. Low key pisses me off. It's my fault, but let's get to the gun projects. Couple things. So the replaced the trigger guard system on the Mossberg 44, the bolt action gun. We got to test fire it still. I was able to secure. Let's see, looking at the list here, I was able to secure some actual factory Ruger 25 round banana clips for the Ruger 1022. I've always wanted some of those, and we never bought those in the past, but I guess Ruger's finally making some that I guess are really good. And we went ahead and bought some. They're literally on the other side of a wall, unopened in a package out there. I'll go ahead when I get some time and load up some banana mags, and then go out on our new rimfire range off the porch, shoot it and record it and show everybody, that project. So that's kind of cool. Anderson manufacturing is gone, as we have reported on and kind of revealed some of the stuff we knew about that. I said this in the past. I don't know if I published any pictures on it, but Anderson was never a company that we really paid attention to. Again, not being a dick about it, but I knew they were here, but I just didn't here in Cincinnati. But it just wasn't a brand that I ever really dealt with because we don't really deal with that kind of gun. So, but with that said, I did a quick look at the Anderson catalog because I knew they were in trouble. So we were able to secure one of the Anderson manufacturing dissipators. And so what a dissipator is, it's a 16-inch rifle with a 20-inch gas system on it, with the 20-inch handguard on it. So in theory, it would cycle, or the recoil impulse would be longer. It'd be a little bit smoother and all that. Well, because you have a shorter barrel past the gas port, your dwell time is shorter, so you cause reliability issues. So how you solve that is you made the gas port bigger, which in turn makes the recoil more probably like a carbine. So, you're not really getting anything. That's the theory. I have yet to fire the gun, but I wanted a dissipator that didn't look like a dissipator. I wanted a dissipator that was actually a dissipator, where it doesn't have a carbine gas system in it with just a long handguard and a fake sight base. I wanted one with an actual rifle length gas system. Anderson made one. We wanted it. We scooped it up. We got it from AIM Surplus before an Anderson officially closed. I haven't looked at the prices. We paid, I don't know, $600, maybe 650. I don't even remember. It wasn't a lot of money, for a fully functional gun. It's a flat top. I like to get a carry handle for it just for the looks. So that's kind of a project we've got going. Again, haven't fired it, have no idea, but I suspect it won't recoil any better than the carbines. But, we'll find out on video together. So my loss will be your gain. Another thing that we did is we've actually bought another Colt AR-15. This is for the Colt nerds, this is known as an R6530. And what this is an A2 carbine that has got some neutered features on it. I haven't checked the serial number on this gun to see if it is technically made before the assault weapons ban, or if this is a gun that was made by Colt in anticipation of the assault weapons ban. A lot of people who are younger people today don't realize some companies, there was a lot of grumblings about wanting to really crack down on assault weapons back in the 90s and early 90s. So some companies and some folks were trying to get ahead of that pending legislation by even actually making AWB era guns or some features before the AWB even passed. And so why would I buy this gun? Well, this gun, we picked it up over at Shooter Supply. It came in, they showed it to us, and it's not unfired, but it is so cherry. It's still got the box. It's got 30 round magazines in the plastic. So it makes me think if I run the serial number down, it is a pre-ban. And I think off the top of my head, it's super lightweight, super handy, super neat. I don't think it has, I think it has a forward assist. It has A2 sights on the fixed carry handle because it's got an A2 carry handle. It pretty certain it doesn't have any fencing. So that's kind of interesting. And I thought, I don't know, what am I going to do with this gun? Well, I could keep it as kind of a reference gun. And I've got to look into this somewhat, but I've always kind of liked those Israeli M4 carbines that, we sent a bunch of that kind of stuff to Israel as military aid in the 90s and, 80s and 90s. And I thought maybe I could go ahead and, get one of those Israeli fiber, whatever, basically make a clone, like basically make an Israeli reservist, whatever clone. This gun, the one in particular that we picked up, actually has a fixed stock on it. It's got a shortened A1 stock on it. So, I don't know if we would keep that or not. I have to look and see if that's possible. But I'll tell you this. So here's kind of what I'm looking for. So every couple years when things aren't really bad over there and people feel more comfortable, posting chick pics, you'll see pictures of these, 18-year-old, 19-year-old, 20-year-old, commercially appealing women, young ladies, and that's compulsory military service running around in, civilian clothes, sometimes bathing suits, because, they live their lives. But I think the rule is if they're on duty or they're on call, you'll see them with, one of these M4 carbines strapped over their shoulder. And it's shocking to a lot of people. It used to be a lot more shocking to people in the US. And I thought maybe we could, make a clone of one of those, find some hot chick, shoot a picture, bring back the 7 a.m. Let's get it on, program, for you OG guys, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm kind of joking, kind of not. Don't worry about it. Other fun things that came up on Bring a Trailer. I got this actually showed up in my inbox from the mailing list from Bring a Trailer, from a dealer here in Ohio that deals in Porsches. And then it showed up from some listeners. And there was a guy in Twinsburg, Ohio. I guess he was a big time Porsche collector. And he's since passed, and they've been liquidating his collection, I guess, for a couple of years now. And one of the things, two of the things he had is in his big Porsche barn, and I'm looking around here at the John 1911, barn, and I'm like, oh my God, am I like a Porsche guy, but with guns? It seems like it. In the Porsche barn, is this the 1911 barn? I don't know. In his Porsche barn, he had at some point, when you've collected everything, when you've collected everything of whatever, you start collecting paraphernalia, whether it's guns or, you know, car stuff, signs. Well, this guy had come into possession of Porsche tractors, and there were two of them for sale. One of them was called like a regular Porsche tractor. They're both red. Um, they kind of look like eight Ford 8Ns if you're into tractors. I mean, they don't look like. I mean, they're probably made in the '60s. Um, and then they they're both red. There was a bigger one. There's a smaller one. The smaller one was still relatively big. I mean, they're not like garden tractors. But what this guy was doing is he had put ball hitches on them, and he was using them to move his cars around like little trailers around his Porsche barn. And what I thought was neat is they even had, and I hadn't seen this since I was a kid. And this kind of tractors, these open station tractors, all the back is exposed. They're so dangerous. But on the fenders of both of these were those little bench seat, a little banister. So like a little kid, your grandkids could, sit and hold on to it and, maybe ride it in a parade. I don't know if these bench seats or factory Porsche modifications or whether this guy did it, but they both matched on both of them. So it was like, I don't know. Do I need a Porsche trailer or do I need a Porsche tractor? Probably not. I always kind of wanted a Lamborghini tractor, but the big one, when I first saw it on Bring a Trailer, it was like $5,800. And it's like, I don't know. I don't know. Who's going to, buy that? Like, I don't know. That could be fun. I mean, well, whatever. I mean, I don't have that much room, but I don't know. $5,800. And I think it went up to $7,800. Well, it closed at $33,000. And it's like, I'm not interested in this little tractor for $33,000. Then I guess the small one sold. I don't know if it sold for 75 or if it sold for 15, but there's a guy locally, Art Neargardner. He runs Shooting Sight. A lot of you may be familiar with him. He apparently bid on, I think, the small one and lost out on that one too. So that was kind of fun, easy. That's my version of gambling is, trying to win an auction, for something cool on the internet. I don't win most of them, but you never know. Every once in a while you win one and you're like, oh my God, I won. That feels great. So that's kind of what's been going on with, projects and kind of fun things around here that you guys have been missing out on. Oh, now let's get into some other stuff. A little bit of politics, a little bit of industry, and a little bit of gun stuff around the internet. So, first thing is, like many of you, I have seen the big beautiful bill and all the fights and going on about that. I haven't really paid that much attention to it because I can't really control it. I mean, I worry about the things I can't control. I guess if I understand it correctly now, that they've moved I guess the Senate parliamentarians said that the members of the Senate, because of the Byrd rule and passing budget bills, which essentially is what this was, that they were not allowed to change the status of items being on an NFA registry or not, because that was not an economics finance bill. So the compromise was, she recommended they stripped it out, or maybe she stripped it out, but the senators put it back in and just made it so the NFA tax is zero, but there's still an NFA application and process, but they can make the tax zero. And this isn't the only thing that's been going on with this tax stuff. This is fairly common in Washington. For example, a lot of you may have heard recently about, is it Dodge? So let me see. BMW announced that they're going to bring back the V8 engine. Maybe it's an inline 8, but a V8 engine for US and for the US market. A Mercedes-Benz came out and said they're going to bring back the V8 engine for the US and Middle East markets. I think Dodge has come out and saying they're doing the V8 engines on their trucks, and maybe they're going to go for 100,000 mile warranties. They're going to do all that. Well, the reason they're able to do all of this is, I don't know if Trump did this or if they passed this in a bill, but basically what they did is on the, as far as I understand how this works, the CAFE standards, car average fuel economy standards, and they keep making them tighter and tighter. That's why you keep seeing all these cars with these smaller engines with turbochargers, superchargers in them, because they're trying to get more gas mileage, kind of like not a lot of use, but still give the horsepower that people need so they can, move quick or haul some, some weight, or, break some inertia to move something like in a truck, for example. Well, the problem is you basically have an engine with good gas mileage, but you're kind of throttling the shit out of that engine. And the engine's not going to last as long as, say, a naturally aspirated V8 or, V12 or W12 that can, go a long way. So, the CAFE rules were set up that they would look at the fleet of vehicles, and for every, they would some calculation, and for every vehicle that the company made that went above the average. So so for example, like, why would like a company like Toyota or Honda make these bullshit little like super small hybrid whatever cars they've been making for years? It's so they can also balance it out when the calculations, so they could sell the Range Rover or sell the Land Cruiser, the Lexus, the bigger V8s, my truck, my Tundra, that kind of thing. So, and then you calculate it out that every vehicle that goes above that average standard across your fleet, there's a penalty, and the government, you have to pay a fine, a tax, a fine to the government, every year. And so they're incentivizing, make them smaller. You don't have to give us much money, but they arbitrarily keep dropping this number. And that's why you're getting all these cars with engines that blow up, which is a story that nobody's covering, but I seem to be screaming high heaven about it. The Trump administration apparently has come out, and in that calculation, just like the NFA, they haven't gotten rid of the rule. They've just made the tax or the penalty multiplied by 0. So anything multiplied by 0 is 0. So now all these companies are like, holy shit, we're going to do the V8s again. Well, that's not dissimilar to what you're seeing with the NFA. They're going to, they're making it 0, and it's a way for them to do taxes and control it. What does this mean for you and me? I don't know. There's other people probably more qualified to pay more attention to this than myself. I mean, do I want to pay the $200? No. Is the $200 going to kill me? No. But I will say this: there's a couple things, NFA items, in particular suppressors, that I want. That's kind of on my big giant 2025 to-do list. And if the NFA $200 tax stamp is going to go to 0 at January 1st of 2026, the theory is that there could be a big backlog, not in the NFA paperwork, but a big backlog in finding stuff in inventory to buy, because everybody's going to start buying this stuff. So I am almost tempted to go out and buy a few things just so I can have them and pay the $200 for convenience. Literally, it just describes my whole life. And you're like, what he possibly would buy? I was like, well, I'd like a 50. I'd probably get a 50 BMG suppressor. I definitely get a 338 Lapua suppressor, a 338 suppressor. We have a 338 Blazer, 338 Lapua Magnum. We've got a couple, barrels in that. We could definitely use a 338. It's like one of those things that, I'd like to have a 338. It's on my long-term list for a 338. I've never just gotten around the dicking with the 338 because we don't hardly shoot a 338. I can't shoot really. I mean, I can shoot a 338 Lapua all I want here at the John Knights 11 range. It's a waste of money because I don't have, 338 doesn't even really start waking up until 1,500 yards. And, we've got a 600-yard range and I can fake 7. So, if I'm shooting it, I'm zeroing it to getting it ready to go someplace else. Well, maybe it's time to go ahead and get that 338 Lapua suppressor and maybe a few other suppressors before shit gets really hard to dig up. I also probably need a suppressor for the other Wilson Combat single stack 9mm 1911 that we've got that's set up to be suppressed. Haven't fired that yet. Feel real bad about that. So yeah, yeah. If you're thinking about there's a bunch of suppressors you want to get and you can tolerate the tax, I might suggest just go ahead and eat the tax and buy it while you can, or you're going to be right back to maybe waiting 6 months or a year for stuff to come in, come in stock. And then, if all these suppressors become hard to get, guess what's going to happen? They're going to go up in price. And if there's that much demand, and are you really going to save $200? You may save $200, um, but you may not get it for a year and a half because it's not in stock. I'd rather just pay the $200 now to Uncle Sugar and have it tomorrow. So that's kind of where I'm at with that in my thinking. If you're thinking about suppressors, you may want to look at that calculation as well. Well, let's talk about I mean, was he maybe 30 now? Lucas Bodkin. So I have seen everything that you guys have seen. I guess, the I mean, we talked about this on the last podcast. I talked about how difficult it is for for families in businesses to get along or to, do business together. Also, thinking about retirement or thinking about the exit or whatever. Actually, some of this is not unrelated to the problems that are going on over at Anderson Manufacturing. A lot of kids on the internet don't put the Bodkin problem in the same category as what happened in Anderson Manufacturing, but I promise you, there's more there than what you're thinking if you paid attention to the last two episodes of the John 1911 podcast. So it appears old Lucas Bodkin has started at least two companies. He Well, than that, I don't know much about it. I mean, it looks like he's starting some kind of defense company. I don't know what that means. And maybe he's going to start a marketing company. I'm not really sure on that either, but I wish him the best. I like the Bodkins. I mean, well, I've always liked the Bodkins. I'm not going to say that I know them because I don't. I'm not going to say that I like what I'm seeing happen with that family, but like the image that they portray and the skill that Lucas puts out and the content that they do, um, I've always liked it and respected it and admired it in some ways. And you know, I realize that there's a lot of people that are not necessarily big fans of the Botkins. We have people around here that are not the biggest fans of the Botkins as a clan. We've intimated about, but I mean, I personally like them. Disclaimer: I don't know what's going on, with that family right now and that business, but we'll find out. So yeah, that's an interesting story. Um, I'm not watching it closely. It'll be interesting to see what Lucas does and what he chooses to do and how he chooses to portray himself with his new brand. It'll be very interesting to see if he goes back to running and gunning or if he does something else. So, because he's obviously very good at the running and gunning. We all would love to be able to run and gun like that. So for me personally, it'd be curious to see, what he decides to do. So, we all would like to be able to run a gun like that. So anyway, that's where I'm at with all that. So I guess I got to talk about the P320 or the M18 now. There's nothing that I can tell you that you guys don't already know. There's a video by this Protraband guy that my understanding is he got these documents through a FOIA request through the Michigan State Police because Michigan State Police have had some issues. So apparently what has happened is, so the 320 just won't stop. So while we've been kind of on construction hiatus, I can't remember what it was. Something happened with the 320. Some other incident happened. And then there was one where is on video. Another one where like a cop is loading shit into their car and they just kind of adjust their belt to like lift up on their duty belt, like, because they're heavy. You see every cop in America does. You see people at gun competitions do that. They lift the whole belt and lift. You see guys, construction workers with utility belts. They do that. Apparently is on film. Bam, the gun goes off and it's like, oh shit, there's another one. And then and it's like, okay, well, that's going to, we'll have to talk about that. And I think there may have even been another one that I've forgotten about because there's been so much with the 320 since the last episode, it's almost out of control. So here is where we are at with, if assuming what we know is true from the Protro band FOIA requests on the Michigan State Police M18 duty pistol issue. So the M18, if you to refresh your memory, isn't just the P320. The M18 is the shorter version of the military issued gun with the external thumb safety. And so it's what the Marine Corps uses. As a matter of fact, it's the same gun that went off in a holster, cocked and locked by Marine Corps security forces in Japan on video. Naval Criminal Justice exonerated this kid. He was injured, and they did a report, and they said that there's something wrong with this gun. They suggest SIG, get involved in this because it wasn't their Marines' fault. And a lot of people, that story did not want to hear it. They wanted to say, oh, I know Marines and they fucked with it. We had, I hate to say it like this, we had a guy from looked like he was from GBRS try to call us out on that. And I was like, well, here's the fucking report, motherfucker. And shut them up because they've been going around saying, we know from a back channel that it was whatever. And it's like, well, I don't know, but we have the report. And like, that was the report that caused me to publicly come out and slam the door on the 320. Cause I, like all of you, I've made a lot of excuses. See, a lot of people think that I'm like this 320 hater. And I'm like, no, not really. I think on paper, it's the gun that should have won the MHS contract. It met all the requirements, adjustable grips, grip sizes. It fits users' hands. It's got an external thumb safety. The Glock didn't have any of that shit. And I've dealt with training people in the military with the M9. And unless they're all infantry male, large Mongo guys, working that Beretta with that long ass trigger and then that stupid slide mounted, decocker, a lot of those guns don't fit probably 40% of the people in the military. They're just too big. They can't get their hand around the gun to reach the trigger to control it and pull it and qualify. And it's retarded. It's just retarded. So, I mean, I thought the 320 was like, it's what that was a gun made for the contract. Guess what? They won the contract and it's American. Not that should have made a difference, but we all know maybe it did, but whatever. So, and I've gone from that to fuck this gun, fuck this bullshit. I don't want this shit on my fucking range because last thing I need is somebody here taking a round in a fucking leg and then I have to deal with it. Or their insurance decides they don't sue me, but their insurance has to sue me because somebody's got to pay that medical fucking bill. And SIG is going to try to hang me out to dry. SIG would hang me out to dry and hang a holster company before they're going to admit anything. So that's kind of where we're at with this 320 stuff, right? Well, Michigan State Police M18 program issued guns. They had an incident, and I had to go and make notes here. This was all released in a FOIA request. So if you don't want to have to watch this stupid video, these Protrand videos, because it's just, mean girls talking. If I have this right, 2024 motorcycle officer, I'm going to translate from what they're saying. I'm going to tell you. 2024 motorcycle officer, either on duty or about to go on duty or off duty, on camera in the motor pool, I believe that's where it's on camera. He is carrying equipment. He has keys, I believe, in his right hand. He has probably a bag in his left hand. And you see a lot of cops are trained like this. If they're right-handed shooters, they don't carry stuff in their right hand. You see a lot of academies teach this kind of stuff. Unless you're a cop, you are exposed to this, you wouldn't know this. So this mystical key set this gun off thing is not the case. Apparently, he's walking with his equipment to and from wherever. Gun goes off in a holster. It's an Alien Gear level 3 holster. And I can't recall if he was hurt. I think that's kind of a shame, really. But, I can't recall if he was hurt. So, but there's been enough of these things that apparently officers on scene were like, whoa, 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 everything stop. They didn't yank the gun out of the holster, clear it, rack it. They basically were like, they took this gun, left it in the holster, and somehow got it to the FBI. I don't know, because they didn't ship it. I don't know if they fucking drove it up there, or I don't know how the FBI would do it, but they got it to the FBI. And FBI has a division that does all their weapons testings and ballistics and all this other kind of stuff. And there is a report written by the FBI for the Massachusetts State Police that is, and I'm not trying to be hyperbolic, and I'm not trying to be ugly, and I'm not trying to, like, I don't know, like, rant and rave for the benefit of the internet, but this report by the FBI on this individual gun and subsequent other guns is fucking insane how out of control this is. So they have identified a number of problems where basically there's a block for the striker in these guns, and there's a spring that holds this block. The spring can lift, so the striker block safety is deactivated. And then there's some issues with tolerances for MIM parts on the sear surface, or whether it's rounded or whether it's this. And, you can watch all that, but they're getting these guns. They X-rayed this gun. They were able to get the gun to set off stuff. They were able to X-ray the gun as it came internally from Michigan State Police before they even started messing with it. They could see things. Then they started doing testing. They started looking at the gun under recoil, the internal parts, and watching stuff move. And then they ended up getting a second M18 from the same police department that was issued, apparently, like part of the package that they got, apparently was unissued. They were able to replicate all these same problems, or most of these problems, and they were even able to, they started taking parts out of a new gun and doing things to them and putting that in the original gun that failed so they could observe other failures, but they kept the original parts. So they fully, basically the FBI fully documented the gun that failed before they touched it. They were able to analyze the gun with X-rays and analysis and put it on paper, what the problems were. And then they were able to go in and demonstrate more problems with this gun, and other malfunctions. The gun that went off apparently had 1,300 rounds through it. I can't remember the condition of whether it was dirt. I mean, it had like maybe less than 100 rounds through it before it last had been cleaned. What else was it? There was, I guess SIG is now coming out. SIG refused to be a part of the testing. They were invited by the FBI, and SIG refused. Alien Gear was invited. They flew their asses right up there. I'll tell you what, if you're listening to this and if you're like a guy that makes holsters in your house and you offer holsters for SIG P320s or M17s or M18s, or like, we get this question all the time. Well, does this cover the SIG Legion? Yes, it covers the SIG Legion. I don't know why you're making holsters for these guns. These people will SIG Sauer at this point would bankrupt your family and put your ass out on the street before they would admit there's a problem with this gun. Why would you do business with these people? This gun is out of control. This gun is fucked to high heaven. And so either one of two things is going to happen. Well, one of three things. The gun's going to get yanked out of service for the military and the government. Or there's going to be an upgrade. Either SIG's going to come out with the model 321 and make a significant change of this gun, or they're going to have to come out with a modification upgrade for the military, and it's going to be called the M17A1 and the M18A1. But, I mean, the problem now is this document and this testing is so thorough that the civil suits, Joe Schmo says the gun hurt him and he's suing SIG, And, SIG is like, they're defending it. They're like, yeah, well, no, yeah, this is all bullshit. This didn't happen. All you have to do is enter into evidence. We have an independent report from a law enforcement agency conducted by the FBI over an incident, just like my clients, fully documented. I mean, this is devastating. I mean, at this point, this document is I mean, I don't know. Like, I guess there's one of two things that are going to happen here when it comes to SIG. Either SIG is going, well, Ron Cohen's going to have to leave SIG, the president of SIG USA or SIG Sauer, whatever called now. But SIG is either going to have to come up with a plan to mitigate the damage, which means they're going to have to admit there's a problem and they're going to have to try to get out of this, or SIG's going to go out of business. SIG's going to be bankrupted by the lawsuits. And what's interesting is we've known these issues have been happening for a couple of years. And if you're like, if every gun, for every 100 guns, there's a percentage of failure. And I'm sure at some point SIG is aware of what this is. Maybe they're trying to mitigate it. Maybe they're doing rolling changes. I don't know. But apparently, whatever changes they've been making are not working. And they've been making a fuck ton of these guns. And they've made so many of them that the percentages, for every 100 guns or every 1,000 guns or every 10,000 guns they sell equals, 0.1 lawsuits, you start realizing the exposure risk from a business perspective not only is growing, it's could be exponential, because it might even be a situation where a lot of these guns that quote, the statistics of the failures may not reflect the true condition of the gun because the guns don't have enough rounds through them or aren't being carried. That's the one thing we see. Like, I'll see this all the time. This is one I get. I got this one from a military guy the other day. And he goes, we've had the M17 for 18 months or whatever he said, and we've qualified on it. We've never had a single problem with the gun. I can tell you from personal experience dealing with the military. I can tell you from personal experience dealing with the Army. I don't know what branch you're in, brother, but I can tell you from the Army, okay, a couple things. Number one, it's very common for base commanders to not allow people to run around with rounds in chambers. As insane as that sounds, that's more common than you think. And number two is folks that are running around with handguns. The folks that are most similar to the civilian customer to have an issue with the M17, M18 that can be replicated by what you're seeing on the street would be your security forces. Because what does the security force do? A security force works 40, 50, 60 hours a week with a gun, many times loaded on their hip. Ideally, again, base commander could change it, loaded on their hip. And the FBI reports even saying they're calling these guns not fit for service because even like twisting, banging, climbing, running, jumping, all these things can set off this gun. Well, what most cops don't get in gunfights. Most security force people don't get in gunfights. So what they do is they wear guns all day. They wear them all day and all night, every day and every night, in and out of cars, in and out of doors, up and down stairwells, banging into stuff, just all kind of falling, tripping. And, those are the people where you're starting to see the issue, where the average person who's like, well, we've had this gun for a number of years and we've all qualified on it. We never had the issue, because you take them out of the armory, you load them up, you shoot them. Then it's like you police everything up and you turn them back in. They're not being carried 40, 56 hours a week, every day. Like that's, what happens to law enforcement. Oh, fun fact. Think about what I just said. The example, the M18 that went off in Japan, Marine Corps security forces, I can't remember the name of the base. It's Yokosuka, he's wearing a gun all day because he's a gate guard, and his gun went off because he's got 40, 50, 60 hours a week carrying that freaking gun. And just like you look at the numbers and you look at the math, you got to look at it. You have to look at all the data, not just some of the data. And this gun is toast. This gun is big trouble. Like at this point, just from a business perspective, again, I'm not trying to harp on this too much, but I want to add some stuff that I feel like a lot of people on the internet are not thinking about, because most of the people that want to talk about this, they want to talk about it in terms of jersey, waving a jersey like it's a football game. The Cleveland Browns versus the Cincinnati Bengals. And it's like, no one gives a fuck. Let's talk about the real world, about the money and the business and the liability. I mean, I would even question at this point as a business person, like, does SIG Sauer even have liability insurance at this point? Who's underwriting that company? Were they dropped by their carrier? Could they be dropped by their carrier? Or is SIG decided? I mean, with all these lawsuits and all these things, at what point does an underwriter go, yeah, dude, here's the $12 million judgment, and we're going to pay it, but this is like the fourth lawsuit we've had to defend, and now we're losing these things. So we've covered you. We're dropping you. I don't know. Is SIG now self-funding their own liability insurance? I don't know. I think there's a good chance of it. And these things are going to get to be worse. Apparently, in the Procher band video, which I wasn't aware of, DHS and ICE, who are it's some people under those departments have been authorized to use the SIG P320. I guess at the first of the year. I assume it was the first of the calendar year. If it's the first of the government fiscal year, that's July 1. That they're dropping to 320. So they're probably all going to go to Glock. But also what was interesting is the FBI report that says this gun has problems. They were able to replicate, they can identify the problems in the gun. They're able to replicate the problems in the gun. They found another example of the gun from the same batch that had the problems. And the gun's not fit for service because it's showing other problems, because the gun had other problems that were not even showing it, that were aware that the Michigan State Police were aware of. The report also says that the FBI, they are not allowing any of their agents to have P320s. They're pulling them from service. They have to turn them in. No exceptions. They also said agents at the FBI are not allowed to have the P365 and the 365 XL. Now, I don't know enough about these guns to know if they're the same internally or not. I've heard that they're not really the same. And I don't know if it's because, the module system. I just don't know. But again, like I have a business. I have to worry about liability. I'm now seeing I saw reports. M18 goes off. Marine Security Forces in the holster. What the fuck? I don't care what the Navy SEAL says, crisscross applesauce. This gun's banned from this facility, period. Now I'm seeing a piece of paper from the FBI that says they're not allowing their people to carry the 365 to 365 XL. I'm no expert on the state of the current gun business, but it's my understanding that those two guns are the most popular guns the last 3, 4, 5 years in the CCW market. It's the old President Nixon Watergate scandal question. What did you know, Marky, and when did you know it? If someone shows up here with a SIG P365 and it goes off and shoots him in the knee, and then they have to go to the hospital, and then the insurance is looking to get paid, and I somehow end up on that list, I'm under oath. Hey, Marky, you did this podcast talking about this FBI report. Why did you allow this gun on your property? And the question is, I don't know why I did. I guess maybe I'm a fucking moron. This is terribly bad, how out of control this is. I don't think the average gun person who doesn't understand business understands what's happening now. This is no longer a jersey waving problem. We are now going to talk about the survival of SIG at this point. It's just a matter of how bad it's going to be. So I don't know what's going to happen. I can't predict the future. If I'm so smart, how come I ain't rich? Maybe I am. I don't know. But like, this isn't a joke anymore. I mean, this isn't the Browns versus the Bengals or all that other stupid sports shit. This is people who are busy because they're administrators. They don't give a fuck about your guns. They don't give a fuck about your gun forums. They've got 100 problems to deal with every day. And it's like, you're telling me there's a gun. Now there's 3 guns that the FBI is taking a big shit on. Get them out of my city. Get them off my range. Get them out of my stores. All of that. I mean, it's over now. It's over, and SIG just doesn't know it. Well, that sounded really negative. Well, this wraps up episode 376 of the John 1911 podcast. You want to see the more stories or pictures, links, anything we discuss? Please go to the website at john1911.com. That's JOHN1911.com. Remember, it's all about shooting guns, not your leg. Everybody, have a good day.